Good morning, 8A1 and 8B4. This is Miss Lawson bringing you a penultimate week of Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. I believe it's going to be the penultimate week. We'll see how we get on with this week. There is going to be a main task at the end of this, which I'll explain to you. I'm just going to go over the chapters that I've asked you to read, which was 15, 16 and 17. And then it was going to be doing some Seneca last week, which is why you didn't get a video. This week, however, I thought I'd come and say hi, which I'm hoping that might just help you feel a little bit more normal, feel like, based on the fact I'm in the classroom, it's our classroom, it might just help you feel a little bit more engaged and a bit more motivated, because I know it's really, really hard. It's really hard to feel like anything is normal the way that it was before, and it's not, it's completely different, and so our learning has to be slightly different, but we still need the same amount of effort and energy from you guys, the same way that I'm trying to give you the same effort and energy to make you succeed and help you succeed. So your classroom's looking fine, everything is the same as it was. It's much tidier without you guys here. There's less mud on the floor, less plastic bottles and less free pens, which I'm struggling because now I haven't got any pens to borrow. I hope that you've all been getting on well with the tasks last week. Let's just go a little recap and see what we had to do. First, as per usual, there is a do now task. Just imagine I'm actually at the desk, taking the register. Let's have a look at this for me. Okay, so when we're obviously looking at the dynamics between Bruno and Shmuel, we are thinking about how they feel about each other, okay? So I would like you to do these 3 steps down the right-hand side for me. If you could go and summarise the Shmuel and Bruno's relationship, just summarise it. It might take you 2 or 3 sentences, or you can do it in 5 bullet points, however you wish to work. And then you're going to reduce those down to 5 words, probably adjectives. But yeah, reduce them down to 5 words. And then step 3, reduce to 1 word that you feel like sums up their relationship. If you would like these challenge guys to be able to pick up a thesaurus perhaps and just really, explore and really get to the crux of their relationship and find the best word for me. And when you come to upload it onto Teams, you can take a screenshot and I'll be very, very excited to see what you come up with. So pause this video, do the do now task, and imagine I'm taking a register. Okay, so what we had to consider when we were reading 15, 16 and 17, we were going to learn, or we did learn, about the father's thoughts and feelings at the end of chapter 17 in terms of the impact that being out with has on his children. And it's not just going to be the physical, it's not just going to be like the lice, for instance, where Bruno has to have his head shaved, but it's going to be more of an emotional impact on that. The needs of his children, we've learnt about that. Satisfying his own needs and his ego. Okay, what do we mean by his ego? Well, he's definitely driven for the fact that he wants to succeed, he wants to have the recognition from the Fury, and he wants to be able to rise in the ranks of the Nazi party, the Nazi army. And so, he's not really thinking about his family and his children in this instance. He's just purely thinking about himself and what he would like to gain from the situation. But he's actually also doing it in a way that he's convincing himself that the children aren't seeing anything. And really what we know as readers, that Bruno especially, and Gretel from that very moment, they looked through that window right at the very beginning and they started peering through and seeing what was outside beyond that fence. So they've been very aware. Now, the way that John Boyne has created it is that clearly Bruno is only 9 and he thinks like a 9-year-old, so a lot of it seems to be passing above his head. And what we're saying, he's feeling a bit clueless, but he's not as clueless as his father would wish he was. And obviously we've got the ending, which will all come to a climax and realise that actually his father's not really thinking about the impact on the children whatsoever. He's believed that the children would not be curious about the camp. I mean, you can see these children, they're walking around the other side of the fence, they're wearing strange clothing. Obviously Bruno and Gretel have been uprooted from their friends and their family, they're missing their grandparents, they're missing their home, so of course you're going to look through a window, you're going to see what you can see out on the other side of the fence. And I think Bruno's father's very much underestimated Bruno's curiosity. And we've also learned about how he feels about his children. So let's have a look at the end of chapter 17. If we have a look, if you want to bring up your PDF in a second, you can. Interestingly, the chapter is called Mother Gets Her Own Way, which is... it's really, really important. We are going to look at kind of the gender roles of the time and how the fact that actually eventually, after much persuasion and being very upset. Mother finally has had enough, and she is going to say to father, look, we need to go. Okay, so over the course of the next few weeks, mother seemed increasingly unhappy with life at Outwith, and Bruno understood perfectly well why that might be. After all, when they'd first arrived, he'd hated it, due to the fact that it was nothing like home and lacked such things as three best friends for life. But that had changed for him over time, mostly due to Shmuel, who had become more important to him than Carl or Daniel or Martin had ever been. If you carry on reading here, mother is literally having her outburst quite, she's a mother. She's supposed to be caring. She cannot stand it anymore. And she is thinking about the family, but she's also thinking about herself. And we find out some interesting things about mother in a second as well. These are the clear clues we've got here. We don't have any choice said father. This is our assignment, and she says no. This is your assignment, mother. Your assignment, not ours. You stay if you want to, which is something that wouldn't, it would never have happened. Or rarely would have happened. Remember, this is the mid-1940s, and the Second World War, and a woman really was expected to stay at home, keep the home, keep the children, look after them. She wasn't really expected to have a voice, and she wasn't supposed to, especially against the husband. The husband was the one in complete control. Interestingly, that chapter is called Mother Gets Her Own Way. So yes, the father concedes, and actually they do get to go, or essentially he's allowed them to go back to Berlin. But that is actually quite unusual of the time. So if we have a look at the gender stereotypes, the gender roles, the portrayal of traditional gender roles is seen throughout the novel. So we've got the grandparents, and even the grandmother is very traditional, and the grandfather. The father is the definite patriarch, okay, of the family. Interesting word. If you're not entirely sure of the meaning, go away and Google it. But it basically means that the male of the family, is in charge. We often hear about the patriarchal society. It's when men is in charge of society. Okay, he is in charge of what the entire family does and where they go. Bruno aspires to be as big and strong as his father, but also feels conflicted in his relationship with his father because of how he appears to treat mother, the maid Maria, and grandmother. Okay, so there's these three quite strong women within this novel, but yet the father and the Fury, obviously, they are still very much in control. Mother often disagrees with father's choices, but as the woman in the relationship, when father makes a decision, she knows she must follow it. She has taken to passive-aggressively complaining about some people. I don't actually love people that are passive-aggressive, but I love the fact that it's a description of passive-aggressively complaining about some people in the household when she is upset, and Bruno has come to realise this means father. Okay, so perhaps we know of instances, perhaps we're all stuck in the house together and when it's locked down, we're being slightly passive aggressive with our tone of what we're saying, and it's just a way of trying to vent out your anger and your frustration, but without being direct. And what would happen if mother was being direct? Well, she could potentially upset the apple cart in terms of that marriage, or she's not going to be listened to anyway. So this is her way of clawing back a little bit of control. When she is unhappy, however, this is the sad thing, mother takes many naps and drinks medicinal sherries. Okay, so sherry is a type of spirit or wine, and when she calls it medicinal, she's basically negating the fact that she's drinking alcohol to cope with it, and she's calling it medicinal because it's helping her, much like a tablet or prescription. But we know the fact that she's lying down and she's perhaps drinking throughout the day, which she shouldn't be doing, in order to cope with and sedate herself and escape her misery. And she has had no real agency or power of her own. She is not in control of her own destiny, she's not in control of her own life, and she's certainly not in control of her children's. Okay. So the adult women in the novel, bound by their traditional gender roles, each have their own negative opinions regarding father's role. Okay, but they are disregarded due to their secondary status. So look at that word patriarch, and then look at the word secondary status. So first status would be the person the most in control and most power, and they have got a secondary status, so they come second. This lack of regard leads to a breakdown of communication, and mother does not discuss what father does with Bruno or why they are truly moving to Auschwitz. Why do you think this is? Have a stop and think for a second. Most of the women are therefore completely silent in their opposition to Auschwitz and the Nazi agenda as a whole. Let's have a think about how many women actually in real life, in these times, would have actually been aghast of what was going on and where their husbands would have been walking off to. And for those of you that took part in my extension task, we looked at the poem Vultures, and we saw that man coming back from the concentration camp, and the fact that he was going back home to see his child. And if you weren't part of that lesson, if you want to, just to reach out and ask them, I can send it to you and send you the PowerPoint. But we'll stop and think for a second. Why do you think it is? Why do you think Mother does not discuss what Father does with Bruno? So not only is she not going to, to tackle Father on this, she's making passive aggressive things, and she is asking, but she's not going to head on tackle him, and nor does she talk to her children exactly what's going on over there. Just have a pause and have a think. Right, what your first task is your first written task. Putting characters in the hot seat allows us to get into the head of the character, and we are going to hot seat Mother today. Okay, so we are going to end up writing a letter. It will be marked, and I do want them sent into teams, please, guys. So the way that we're going to prepare for this this letter, is to think and write down 3 questions you would like to ask Mother. 3 questions, that's it. Make sure they are relevant and pertinent to the book. Okay, I don't want you to ask what kind of sherry she drinks and does she paint her nails. Think of something that's actually linked to the actual book, because what you now then need to do is then to transform those 3 questions. Okay, so task 2, you are going to then write a letter. So first step, you're going to do your 3 questions. Then task 2 is going to be writing a letter. Now, we've done this before, guys. We've done this over and over again. You should be absolute pros at this, okay? So, instead of rolling your eyes and thinking, oh, I've done this so many times, nope, use it as an example to be better and better and better. And if you do have your exercise books, this is the time to go back to find your letter. We've done several over the course of time. There was one during the Malala scheme of work. There was a letter in some of the Tempest work that we did. So have a look back and see what your targets were. Your letter must be in the correct letter format, and you must include 4 persuasive techniques. Okay, so the 4 that I'm clearly looking for, the 4 that you perhaps struggled with last time, is direct address, the rule of 3, rhetorical question, and emotive language. I would like 1 example of each of those 4, please. Now, if you want to add more, brilliant. Okay, I'm never going to stop you from doing more, but you have to have those 4 persuasive techniques. And for you, sometimes the work's been sent in, and it's sent in, and it's brilliant. It's what you've done is you've taken your phone and you've taken a shot of it, and then you're uploading it to Teams, and it's fantastic. But it comes up usually landscape, so I have to turn the laptop to one side, and it's sometimes a little faint. So it's fine. On the whole, I can read it. I would prefer Word documents if it is possible at home. I know it's not always possible, but if you can, that would be ideal. But if you can't, can you highlight your 4 persuasive techniques? It would just make my life easier when I'm coming back to Mark and having a look at your work on Teams. It will just ping out to me. Obviously, I'm going to mark the whole thing as a whole. I'm not just going to say, right, 4, and then mark it as done. I'm going to look at your sentence structures and I'm going to make sure your punctuation is correct. If not, varied. I want you to use some interesting words, especially with that emotive language. Looking at emotive language, you are pleading with her. Okay, so what are you actually going to be writing? Well, good question. Hang on a second. Let's just have a look at these 4 techniques again. If you need to go back and have a look at your DeForest techniques, again, that will be in your exercise books, or you can alternatively Google them, but these are the 4 that I've put here for you. And I want you to put short, powerful sentences and alliteration as an extension. Remember, those sentences, they are key, absolutely key to making an impact. So the nice short punchy sentences, and the long, more complex sentences when you're to be more descriptive. So what you're going to do is you'll sign off your letter as Mother, because in those days, actually, it sounds a bit strange, but mother, a wife and husband would perhaps call themselves Mother and Father, so that isn't unusual. Okay, and what you're going to be writing is you're going to be writing a letter as Mother to Father, persuading him to let the family move back to Berlin. So imagine that he hasn't actually agreed by this chapter 17. Again, you're making an imaginative alternative ending, and so you're going to beg in this letter. Okay, so here are the letter writing rules. Your address, top right, yours to the left, include the date, always start with dear and end with a comma, set it out in paragraphs and sign off yours sincerely if you have an ace in yours sincerely mother. Your opening paragraph should explain why you are writing. Okay, when you've got those 3 questions for the hot seat, you will then ultimately know what you're going to be writing here. So that's your plan. The next 2 paragraphs will just put forward your views and should use facts and examples to support these views. We don't want statistics, there aren't any. Okay, so let's forget about that example. For when you're putting your 2 paragraphs together, you need to have your opinion in there, and you need to try and use facts and examples. It's going to be hard. It is a fictitious text, but yet it's based on something real. So just give it a go and see if you can. And the conclusion should sum up your main points and offer a solution. Well, the solution is they all go back to Berlin. We know that. Whether your letter actually is asking for the whole 4 of them to go back and plus the maid, or are you just asking as mother to take the children back, I'll let that be up to you. Use persuasive techniques to make your arguments strong and powerful. And if you're a little unsure, and I will be uploading this PowerPoint to Teams so you can go through it again in your own leisure, but this is the example of how your letter potentially will look like. I need it to be laid out correctly. Why do I need this letter to be laid out correctly? Good question. Well, it's good practice. Okay, it's really good practice for you to make sure that you can write a letter. It's something you're going to be doing for the next couple of years. So if you get the right form and the format and the tone ready and correct for a letter, you're going to be set, and that's why we keep practicing it. So pop your address or a fictitious address up here, the date, there's their address there, and you got, so you say, dear father, and I'm writing, and include it, and be kind of excited about the fact that you're passionate about to get those children out of that scenario, out of that situation. You want to save Bruno and Gretel out of that awful situation. But are you asking father to come back with you? Who knows? That's entirely up to you. Your reading for this week, beyond that, and I don't know why that's gone so big, that doesn't look particularly great, is to read chapter 18, 19 and 20. And for those of you that are keenly aware, and I know lots of you have already read the book, you will know that is the end of the book, and then there will be one more final task before we start something new. Okay. As an extension task, if you are some of you are going to be bored and needing extra work, and I'm offering you, I would like you to write a proper formal paragraph. And father and mother clearly have opposing views. Okay, that's absolutely without doubt. However, there are similarities between them, and this is where you might take half a day. When I was setting this work, there's never a time I set you work that I haven't thought of myself. Okay, and even I spent a good couple of hours thinking, like, what are the similarities? And there are. It does sort of centre around power and control. Okay, so you guys know, the people that I'm talking to about this very second, who this extension task will relate to. Even if you've never done an extension task before and you really fancy it, give it a go. And what I would like us to do is to try to aim to meet up again this coming Friday, like we've been doing over on Teams. Sorry, excuse me. And we can discuss it. And I want to hear those paragraphs read to me. I want you to explain how they are alike, preferably providing evidence from the text as per usual. So they are your tasks. So your hot seat task, then there is the letter task, and the letter is the thing that is a must. It is non-negotiable. I'm going to mark those properly and give you feedback. And then there is the extension task, should you wish. And for some reason, my face is still really big. So on that note, I hope you have a lovely week. Like I said, any other questions, any other queries, please just don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always here. Well, maybe not here, but I'm always here. Right, take care. Bye.